Hi everyone and welcome to my channel and to this time-lapse version of a lioness in soft pastel. As always, there will be a full-length series of tutorials from this on my Patreon channel, but if you enjoy this version here then please do subscribe to me here on YouTube. So I start with my outline. I usually do my initial sketch on a separate piece of paper and then transfer that onto my pastel paper. And that's the outline that you see here. And I'm working on the brown colour of pastel matte paper. The last time I painted a lioness, I used velour paper, and that was for a unison workshop, which I know that many of you came to and enjoyed. And I've had lots of requests since then to do another lioness, which is not a problem because I got so many beautiful reference images of this particular lioness. This was taken in the Zoo de Castellar in the south of Spain. It's a place that I often go for some of my wildlife references. And she was really in the mood for posing this day. I really loved this shot in particular. She looks pretty relaxed. Not really eyeing me up for dinner, but I still think she probably would. She's got that look about her. So I really love painting the big cats because they tend to have this intensity in their expression. And I decided to work on this one reasonably large. It's 18 inches wide. And that's not a huge painting, but I know when I get to around 16 or 18 inches that's going to give me lots of space for smaller details. And on this size of a face, there is a lot of detail, so many tiny little short hairs. And of course, you don't have to paint every single hair. Sometimes I take a more painterly approach with animal fur. Sometimes I get lost in all of the detail, and that's often the case with the big cats because there are just so many little hairs right across the structure of the face. So as always, I started with a bit of the background, and I got pretty bored with the background very quickly though, and I abandoned that area and decided to start work on the lioness. I like to work backgrounds first so that I've got some pigment on the paper just behind the edges of the animal, so that when I add the edges of the animal, it sits out nicely on top of my background colours. So as long as I've got some pigment around the edge of the animal, really I can make a start on the animal at any time and come back to finish the background later on. So sometimes if I'm struggling with the background, I might just do that and start working on the main subject, and it's often a bit easier to judge what else the background needs when you come back to it later on. So as I mentioned, there will be a full tutorial series from this. I'll probably make some tutorials on the background as well, because as you'll see in a while here, there's a lot of rock both far away in the background and really up close and detailed in the foreground. And to me, those areas can be just as important as the animal itself because it really sets the scene. Sometimes it's very nice to see the environment, especially when it's a wild animal. It gives some sense of where they live. And of course, when I'm photographing wild animals, I'm not on safari. I'm usually photographing animals who are in captivity. So sometimes I'll completely change the background to try and, I suppose, represent their natural habitat a little more. In this case, I quite liked the close-up of the rocks that she was lying on. I felt that could be anywhere. It could be in the wild. So I went with that. But the main thing that drew my attention to this as a painting reference was the light and shade. I'm always yapping on about the sunlight. It's one of my favourite things to paint. And if there's good sunlight in a photo reference, it almost doesn't matter what the main subject is. To me, I'm really capturing the light and shade. That's what's most interesting to me. So in this case, we've got beautiful bright light coming from the right. And you can see all of those brightest areas on the Lioness. And I am going as bright as pure white in some cases there. But then what I find really interesting is the colours that I choose for the shadow areas. So, of course, I'm avoiding bringing pure white in there. Instead, I'm using more muted tones, a lot of blues, a lot of blue-violet. One of my favourite colours is Unison's Grey 8. And Unison's Animal set, which I designed for them many years ago, it comes in several different sizes, and I decided for this painting to limit my palette to just my Unison Animal set. So I don't often do that because I have so many beautiful pastel colours and I really love making use of as many of them as I can sometimes. I really love how pastel encourages you to experiment more with colour. But occasionally I really like to revisit that animal set and I suppose test it out. See what I can create with just the palette that is the animal set and see if I can produce a full painting without using any other colours. So of course that's nice for those of you who have the Unison Animal set. If you plan to work along with me on this painting, you'll have all of the colours that I'm using. In fact, I think I only used about half of the set in total. And it's a nice exercise sometimes just to limit your choice of colours. I know that if I hadn't have limited myself to the animal set, there are probably some other colours I would have liked to pick up. But it was interesting to see how I could get to the finished result using just those colours. And it always proves to me that the animal set, well, you could make do with just that animal set if it's animals you want to paint. The only thing that you would be lacking would be some greens, for example. But it's certainly a good place to start if you want to paint animals. So a long time spent on each part of the lion. I think short-haired coats take me the longest amount of time because it's literally the most amount of surface area to cover with very tiny, short little dashes and marks. In some cases, for example, up the centre of the face, on the nose, on the top of the nose, you've got some marks there that are mere dots. But certainly painting on this scale when it's a short-haired animal, be prepared to have some patience and just stick with it. This painting, I've actually split this up over, I think a couple of weeks I've split this up over. And I took a little break actually to paint another cat, but a tiny little kitten, which if you follow me here on YouTube, you might have already seen that because I released the full project here on YouTube for you to work along with. And that was to celebrate reaching 40,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So although I do make a lot of content on my Patreon channel, I always try to release a little bit for free here on YouTube as well. And obviously all of my time-lapse videos are here on YouTube. But as often as I possibly can, I try to put out some real-time stuff here on YouTube as well. So do check those out if you fancy painting along with me and learning in real time from me. Because of course it's difficult to learn from the time-lapse videos. to me, these videos are just a little bit of fun, and I think they're the ones I enjoy the most because after spending so many hours on one painting, it's quite fun for me to see it play back in just over 10 minutes. It always makes me feel like I worked really quickly when in actual fact it may have been a long slog to get through this. But I really enjoyed this piece. I'm loving making use of some of my wildlife reference images. And of course, if you come and join us over on Patreon, you get access to those reference images as well. So when I release this Lioness tutorial series, I will also release a photo pack of lots of different reference images of the Lioness. So you can either work along with me on this one, or you can make use of one of the royalty-free images and create your very own painting using the techniques from this series. So the rock that she's lying on, I find stuff like this just as tricky as the main subject, sometimes trickier. And that's why I always include lots of tutorials on the background and foreground elements too. I feel like they can really add something special to the painting. But it's things that I used to shy away from painting a lot of the time because I think they are deceivingly difficult sometimes, the background elements. Although in your head you know it's just a lump of rock, there's a shocking amount of detail on that lump of rock. And it's just about having patience, taking your time, and often giving the lump of rock as much attention as you would give to the eyes of the lioness, for example. So I hope that you enjoyed seeing this come together here and listening to a little bit of my process as we watch in time-lapse. So please do come and check me out on Patreon if you would like even more tutorials. You can actually browse all of the tutorials that I have available before signing up on my website, emmacolbertart.com. This is the full library here. But I hope that you enjoyed this here on YouTube and that you will hit that subscribe button and the little bell notification and keep up with all my new videos. Thanks very much for watching this here, and until next time, happy pasteling.